What's up, guys? Michael Anthony here, another video. Today we have Tom from Liquid Modern, Dr. Sector, and Mr. D from Warpsektor, Electronic Ghost Machine, and Night Razor, aka Razor Boy. Today we're talking about the many genres of electronic music. We already all agree that electronic music is real music, so we're going to move on and say, why is there so many genres?
I mean, I'll start, I guess. Like when I first got into electronic music in, I guess, like the mid 90s, early 90s, it seemed like there were a lot less genres. I mean, when you go out to raves and stuff, there'd be drum and bass jungle, there'd be house, there'd be trance and techno. And that was about it as far as, the big electronic music. And it seems like we were talking about with, DAWs and stuff, democratizing music. It seems like the more that is created, then it brings in the need to categorize and subgenre and subgenre and subgenre to really suck all the life out of it.
I think a lot of it might be just that people try and get into it and then they do it poorly and say, well, I'm not trying to do that. I'm inventing my own thing. And then it becomes its own thing.
I can see that. Well, I mean, that happens in any music scene. I mean, when I was a kid, like punk was my stuff. And there are so many different genres of punk rock that it's insanity. And I mean, same thing with metal, like everything just keeps getting categorized and categorized down and down and down into just this very specific niche.
Yeah, I remember the 90s. Everything that couldn't be categorized was techno, right?
Yeah. Because I remember when all electronic music was techno.
Yeah.
That's it.
And then some jerks got in there and were like, electronic music is actually anything on an electronic instrument. And then techno's underneath that. So technically EDM, electronic dance music, it could be separate from, it got out of hand. It got out of hand real fast.
It's a bit much.
That's one thing when I was looking online. That was the one thing it mentioned about electronic music. Basically it said it started in the 70s. It got popular, being brought into like popular music, I should say. And then 80s obviously was like an explosion. 90s, I grew up in the 90s pretty much. And to me, it was house, techno, drum and bass, trance, anything that was in the club pretty much.
One thing that I find a little bit annoying is, like, if you look up, and maybe you did this in preparation for this video, Mike, but if you look up like YouTube videos about different genres of electronic music, the differences are so subtle, where it's like, this one has a BPM range of this one has this type of synth sound. And it's like, man, if I don't know the rule book of the genre, like, it's ridiculous.
And no two experts agree on what those differentiations are either. And, everybody's a self-proclaimed expert too. So,
yeah.
Well, and I
Who's got the
mean,
time for that?
how often do people sit down and say, I'm going to make X genre? And I mean, most of the time, you'll set out trying to make a certain genre, I guess, but then like it should become your own with originality and stuff. So does that keep outside of that genre because it doesn't adhere to every single tenet of that? Or is, are genres too non-inclusive?
Honestly, I don't try.
well, who likes to be called, to be limited into a genre? I don't think that any artist does set out to say, hey, I want everybody to define me. I want my listeners and, what kind of clothes they wear to define me and my music.
Genre is a tool for listeners, I think. But I think some
For
marketing
listeners, yes.
people get into it and go, hey, I can capture these listeners if I throw out some buzzwords that they like. And I think that's sometimes where the specificity gets into it. And then also, you have a bunch of hipsters out there that just want to be like, I heard it first and it's this, it's technically, and that, I think that drives it a little bit too. But mostly I think the genres for the listener so that when they're browsing, they can go, this is jazz-ish and this is house-ish. And but there might be
shorthand for talking
drum
to
and
each other
bass
about it.
You got drum and bass and my peanut butter.
I think if you're really going to be creative, I mean, maybe what you do falls clearly into some specific genre, and that's fine. But I think, you know, there's a lot of music that falls in between the lines, and it's creative, it's new, and maybe that's what's special about it. I think the landscape as it is right now, like we were talking about a little bit before we started this video, it can be pretty annoying for independent artists when you go and try to submit something to a radio station or whatever it is, and you're required to select some kind of pre-made genre that's like, I don't fit that.
And it's usually fairly arbitrary, right? And considering the fact that, you know, if you look up electronic music genres, like Wikipedia's article, for example, has like 500 different subgenres, and maybe you do fit into one of those, right? But you know, none of these sites that you're submitting to is going to have anything close to that level of specificity, right? So if you, even if you do identify with one of those particular genres, you're never going to find that on any of those forums, right?
Do you guys ever have a thing where you submit to a playlist or whatever, and you discover that people are describing one of your tracks as a genre that you would have never even thought people would call it that? Anybody have that experience other than me?
Let them. Who cares? Tool for the listener. So if you know, if a listener wants to use that that label to you know, to describe your music to another listener, and if it gets you that second listener, then who cares what they call it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think it can be a little bit more of a problem if like you're like, hey, listen,
Yeah.
you know, I'm a
Say-
rock artist, and you know, you get put in a completely like the polka category or something. I could see how that could be. But if it's just like a subgenre mismatch, I don't think that's too big of a deal, right?
So
But-
there's something to be said there in that category, right? So in the rock world, right, there's extremely strong identity attached with which subgenre of rock and or metal you fall into, right? And I think that definitely exists in the electronic music world as well, but I don't know that people cling to those identities as much in the electronic world as they do in something like the metal world, right? I think there's definitely some of it.
That's a really
But
good point. That's a really good point, that there are some subcultures that are sort of associated with some musical genres, but not every musical genre has like, yeah, this is the hairstyle, this is what we wear, this is how we look if we like this kind of music. But that's true, they do sometimes overlap.
Going back to the different genres, I once heard that music stores were use them mostly for stocking their shelves, you know, making different parts of their store. This way people know,
Makes sense.
you know, that's what I kind of heard years back.
it takes me back to I remember, you know, growing up, I'd go to like the Wall or like FYE, right? And I'd walk into the metal section, and I'd sit there and look at the album art, right? And within this metal section, there's, you know, 100 subgenres of metal, but
Mhm.
based on the album art, I could tell you what the music would sound like,
Yeah.
right? So there's this interesting aesthetic with visuals, right, that ties directly into that too.
Well, it was the same thing with the punk scene as well. Like you could tell what kind of punk band they were based on the album art.
Yeah.
Yeah, checkerboard is gonna be ska.
Ska all day long.
What if it's got like graffiti and lowriders?
I don't know.
Then it's
Could be
like
gutter punk.
Southern California. Then it's like
Nah.
suicidal tendencies.
Yeah,
or
like
something.
suicidal and all that. Yeah. The hardcore
Yeah.
SoCal punk.
Well, I think we figured it out.
We figured it out. We solved the world's
That's it.
problem.
So
Well-
there was EDM, EBM. Obviously, there's house, trance. Trying to think what else there is. Obviously, besides the
Synthwave.
synthwave, of course.
All the waves,
All the waves.
Drum and
Vaporwave.
bass.
Throwwave,
Jungle,
drum and bass, which is
drill and
yeah,
bass,
has a bunch of subgenres
UK
like
bass music, trap
dubstep and
music,
Witch House.
witch house. There you go.
you and your Halloween genres.
I'm telling you, I do enjoy the horrorcore stuff. You know, anything in that genre. If it's got bells, I'm good with it.
Yeah, if it has bells and weird like spooky ghost
heard about
sounds,
that.
he likes it.
I heard you
Yeah.
like to crank those bells into a damaging, permanently ear damaging, piercing thing.
What was that? I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I like bands or artists that somehow allow themselves to do all sorts of different stuff. I always bring up the Beatles. I'm a big Beatles fan, but like, if you look at the White Album, you have everything from beautiful piano ballads, weird art noise pieces like Number 9, acoustic stuff, rock stuff, and somehow it was almost like they trained their fans like, this is what to expect from us. Anything. You just never know. We could do anything. I like that idea.
Yeah, Radiohead in a way was similar to that, I think, as well. Like how they first came out, and then going back to like 10 years, like Kid A, and then what they came out after that. I always felt like they got into like more electronic as time went on. It wasn't as popular. A lot of people didn't like their later albums, but I did.
Yeah, it's interesting. I see independent artists on social media sometimes saying things like, well, should I release this under a different name, or should I do it in a different EP? It's a different style thing. And I sort of feel like back in the day, people would be upset because the guy from the record company would come in and say, well, you can't release that. This is different. Now we're doing that to ourselves. We're going to police ourselves and say, like, I can't release this thing that is my own personal creation because of what? I think there's no rules with creativity. I think that's where people can mess themselves up getting too focused on what genre is this.
I think that hints at that marketing issue, right? So if you're worried about,
I think
the
that there's an
marketing
irony
aspect,
there. There's an irony there in that if if you can worry about that, then it probably doesn't matter. I don't think that anybody's going to care if you do branch out. It's not like the fan base is going to be so big that they'll get offended. Most of them are going to be our friends at this point. They're going to be our followers. They're going to be like, yeah, that's cool. You do what you want,
Yeah.
But I mean, they're like Dead Life will do that. He'll do space music on top of his regular, hard or dark synth and horror synth, and a little bit of chill here and there. But yeah, I mean, I think within electronica, within the circles that we run in, you can get away with that, and it's kind of a conceit to worry about it.
Yeah.
I mean, what genre would you call, just off the top of your head, what genre would you call Daft Punk? To me, it's kind of more like disco. But and they have
Italo
a unique way of
disco,
sampling
yeah.
things.
French.
But of course,
French
if you
disco.
said disco, like you would never say disco. You know what I mean? Like I totally understand what you're saying, but if you went on, I would think if you went on Spotify, if you like looked into what they're described as, I would think.
Yeah, it's more of a DJ sampling type of style, but yeah, I don't know that they really said like, hey, we're trying to be this type of genre. I think they just really appreciate music, and they like the dance stuff, and they like all the cool machines and things you can make with it, and it turned out to be a good run for them. So I think genre can help you, even if you are kind of like on the edge of like, who else sounds like them, really? Like you can identify almost immediately when one of their songs come on, versus a lot of electronic artists, like how many people sound like Skrillex, like almost every dubstep artist tries to get that exact sound.
Yeah, I would say the early stuff was kind of like house, like Around the World, things like that. The real early stuff.
Yeah, like disco.
Then they just branched out into their own.
I mean, not to go off the deep end on the creative process, but I think to a certain extent, at least for me, when stuff is going really well, it kind of takes on a life of its own and becomes what it wants to be. So to me, I don't kind of, it sounds like there's a funny story behind that,
yeah.
but to me, I don't kind of, I don't want to limit myself to like, well, I can't use that sound because that's not my target audience. It's like, are we creative people or are we marketers? I think it can mess things up when you try to wear both hats simultaneously. But anyway, why'd you guys laugh? Sounds like there's a funny story with that.
I was laughing because I saw the ukulele.
We spent I think about 4 hours last night sampling Guy Fieri clips and microwave sounds and making a Guy Fieri club banger.
To learn.
Called Flavor Town.
It's really hard for no reason. And like when you said, like, you know, you have to pick, do I not play the sound because it fits in? Guy Fieri yelling in the background, Flavor Town is just, what genre is that? I don't know, but we made it. So
Whatever pleases the people, you know.
well, there's people in chat. And
How do you deal with the licensing on something like that?
You don't actually release it. You just kind of throw it on SoundCloud and pray.
Yeah, it's fine unless it becomes popular and then you got trouble.
Mhm.
I heard some kind of
Unless somebody hears it, yeah.
Somebody, I forget who it was. Maybe you guys, when you hear the story, you'll know who I'm talking about. But some artist sampled a Steely Dan song. The song took off, and then they needed to negotiate for the rights with Steely Dan. Steely Dan said, "Cool, we'll take $100,000 and the publishing rights." So we, Steely Dan, wrote that song, which apparently, because it was already a hit, that like they kind of had no choice and had to give them that. But the article that I was reading or whatever basically had the opinion that it was worth it for these guys because they blew up as a result. And you know, okay, Steely Dan gets all the money for it, but now they're, you know, reached some level of exposure and notoriety. But so maybe that's like that with your Guy Fieri microwave jam.
I mean, the Food Network is pretty hard after their IP, and that, you know, they're gonna get us. So we got to look out.
Get a cease and desist. You should tweet it, tag them, post that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come at me, bro.
It's gonna take us to Flavor Town.
I mean, that's a pretty normal story, though, isn't it? I mean, that's the same thing that happened with 9 Inch Nails and what's his name, Old Town Road.
Yeah.
What was the artist's name? Little Nas X. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That happened
Slandering
with that.
God.
What was that? The Beautiful Symphony or whatever from the 90s that sampled like the
Unfinished
beginning
Symphony.
Huh?
Unfinished Sympathy.
They sampled a Rolling Stones song and like everything that they made from it.
Bittersweet
Symphony.
There it is.
Yeah, Unfinished Sympathy was the Stones song. Wasn't it? EGM, am I getting it right?
I'm sorry?
Was it the Stones song was Unfinished Sympathy, and Bittersweet Symphony is the one that sampled it.
I'm not sure about the Stone song, but yeah, Bittersweet Symphony is the
But like they lost everything from that. Like, yeah. And it was just like a 2-second clip that they sampled.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was the whole loop. I mean, it was the whole song.
Was it?
Yeah.
It's just that one piece over and over again, isn't it?
And again and
That's
again.
right.
Yeah.
What I do mostly is I'll create my own loops. I'll record stuff, loop it, and kind of sample it, try to get some kind of retro sound so that I'm not dealing with that. Or sometimes I'll sample like horror movies and stuff like that that are within public domain. So there's some chance of not having a problem. But
I think what we kind of go for is the whole Weird Al effect, right? You know, if it's parody, right? If it's considered parody, then I believe there's some statute for that.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
not like we're taking a whole show and copying and pasting it. We're taking little pieces and things and making beats out of it. And yeah.
You guys should take the whole show. I think that'd be better. Just do that. Just like make a music video out of their show.
Based on the music that you guys make, would you say that it comes from a genre that you liked, or that you want to make, and then you just go with it? Or is it like you just make it no matter what you like?
I mean, we typically just take like an era, kind of like when I'm coming up with the music and stuff. I'm just like, hey, I've got this kind of song stuck in my head, and I start going for that, and then it goes on its own path and just becomes whatever you call us. So yeah,
It takes its own form. I mean, for sure, I like a lot of different styles of music, so they kind of creep in.
Yeah,
maybe you could say. So when you ask, like, am I making something that is connected to a style of music that I like? For sure. But it just, like I say, it kind of takes on a life of its own. And sometimes it sounds like this, and sometimes it sounds like that.
A lot of times when we start making a song, I'll have an idea in mind, and I'll say, okay, well, I want this to be a heavier dark synth style song, or I want some chiptunes influence here, that type of thing. And it never ends up the way I expect it to. It's always something completely different from where it initially started. But I think that's also a lot of Mr. D and I kind of playing back and forth with our own influences. So it's just this give and take.
Yeah, I like to play instruments. So I will take if I want to play a jazz riff, I'll play a jazz riff on top of his hard drum and bass, whatever.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I just take my favorite part of any genre, and I think about, oh yeah, this thing from this song was cool when they did this. And I'm not thinking, hey, I want to like slip it in and make it fit into a genre. I'm just thinking, I thought that was cool. I think I can hear it working with this. Let's try it. And we do a lot of trying out. We'll delete stuff, we'll add stuff, we'll move it to a different section of the song, see what it sounds like. Because you can do that with computers now, which is just, you can just move the pieces around. Does this fit better in the chorus? Does this fit better in the verse? What are these little beeps? So, oh, you made a mistake here. I actually kind of like it, and it, yeah.
I think that's the way it works out a lot of the time, is that, I want this to have an Nitzareb feel to it, and then you turn around and it's like, oh, that's Moby. That's the whole role of influence.
I think EGM brought up something that makes sense earlier, the concept of trying to be an artist and a marketing person at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of independent artists, right? So we're wearing a bunch of different hats all at once. We're trying to be, musician, producer, mastering artist, right? As well as the marketing person. So I think you kind of let some of that seep into your art as well, accidentally, if you're not careful.
Well, in the creative process, you can like genre or hate genre, but it's been wildly successful, I would say, right? It's worked for the listener to gravitate towards what they want.
Well, and I think in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with genre, and like even trying to adhere to a genre, as long as you bring something of yourself to it and you don't literally sound generic like every other person that you're trying to emulate.
Yeah, I think also the danger is when you're wearing all these hats that you screw yourself up thinking about what other people are going to like rather than thinking about what you like and what you want to create.
Yep. Did y'all see that article about Copywave that was floating around last week?
No.
Yeah, was that the one talking about, like Synthwave is dead because all Synthwave artists sound alike or something like that? I remember seeing something like that.
I mean, yeah, broadly, but I mean, it did have some good points.
Is that I think you're thinking of the Iron Skullet article.
Might be.
Yeah.
I can't remember who wrote it. I want to say like Michael Oakley or something like that. But it was pretty interesting about what we're talking about when people set out to purely create a copy of something that has existed and has kind of been done in the same fashion by a lot of, different things.
Well, maybe the driving force behind that was you're looking back to a particular period of time and you want that nostalgia. And so you try to get as close to that nostalgia as possible, which breeds like a very specific set of instruments and beats and sorry.
I think what we want to be, if you're
Exactly.
emulating something previous that happened, you want to be like Led Zeppelin to the blues or Rolling Stones to the blues or something like that. What you don't want to be is the royalty free, like stock music version of a hit song that you see on a commercial. It's just gross.
That's
Music playing in
literally why we
Sears.
started making music. What the hell? Quit now.
Dr. Sector, what are we trying to make again? I think we started off trying to do synthwave, and then I think it just turned into what people on Twitch want us to do at the moment.
Mostly we just
What
make
people
God
on
angry.
Twitch wanna see.
And they
But
want to
to
see
Mr.
like a
D's
weird
point-
carnival of sound effects, I think.
That's what we're gonna call our
To
next
Mr.
album.
D's point, though, about wanting to emulate something from a certain time where you have the nostalgia. I mean, that's why synthwave is called synthwave. Yeah, it uses synths, but it was emulating new wave originally. Then it became kind of something else where it was everybody, it's like, okay, well, I didn't really like Duran Duran and the Thompson Twins, but I did like the soundtracks to all those John Carpenter movies, and that's kind of what it turned into. But that's how the name stuck, and that's, like you said, Mr. That's where it came from,
Reminds
and
me of
that is
dubstep.
something that that's an important fact.
Yeah, it's
Because
interesting.
dubstep started off like that, right? It was like more of a UK vibe with a little vibrato to the bass, a little whoop whoop whoop.
Well,
And
literally,
then Skrillex kind of like took it and they made fun of him for making this harsh bruv step, they called it, right? And that like took over the genre, though. It really did. That harsh
because
style.
dubstep originally was literally just slowed down drum and bass. And like it was basically screwed drum and bass. And then it started to take on a life of its own, and then again started specializing and subgenreizing and all that, to where
There's some stuff that I really like that's considered classic dubstep that I didn't even know till I saw later. It was like, that's considered dubstep. And current day dubstep is, like you say, it's departed quite a bit from what it.
I think I was bringing it up to like say that even synthwave in itself had, just like Razor was saying, has kind of evolved over time to become this homogenized thing of like, what's my favorite VHS tape from the 80s. Like that's what people want to, what was the ending credits for this movie? I want a song like that, and
Yeah, and that's with all the little splintered subgenres of the synthwave world, right? And I think you're exactly right. It's which piece of the nostalgia do I relate to, and how do I want to try and relive that feeling? So like was mentioned before, like the all the Carpenter stuff, right? Or like I don't know, if I'm into all the horror stuff, I'm trying to evoke that horror feeling that I got from watching the Critters movie, back in the day, like whatever it may be.
or the weird science stuff, like
Yeah.
Okay.
If you could invent your own, I know that Warpsektor's done this, but if you could invent a genre, if you could name your own genre, or create a genre for yourself, or to describe your music, what would you call it? I'll go
Okay.
last.
I'll go first. I like trip hop. I feel like I have some trip hop influences and some drum and bass influences. So I'll go with trip and bass.
I like that. Liquid Modern, you.
retro pop. I mean,
Electro pop?
retro pop. I don't know.
Retro pop.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean
Cool.
that's
Sounds
that
good.
might be a genre. I don't know.
It might be
Probably.
a genre, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it is. It suits us. I'll stick with
Yeah.
it. I won't reinvent the wheel.
Sounds good.
All right. Yeah. Now I know you Cyberjank before, but if you had to come up, if you had to do a different one, Dr. Sector, Mr. D,
Meme core. I like
Yeah.
meme core.
meme core.
Yeah,
I
meme
love
core is
it.
another
Okay,
thing that we've
cool.
used.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That's a good one.
Excellent.
Razor.
Razor.
How about chroma core?
The chroma core.
Chroma core.
Core?
That sounds cool.
Oh,
Know what's changing about genre? Let's talk about this. A lot of times when I go on Pandora or one of these sites, I don't even have to think about genre if I don't want to.
Yeah.
I can pick a song and
Mhm.
it will take all the genre tags and do some kind of magical AI Wonderland nonsense and be like, you like Wu-Tang Clan, you're gonna love, whatever this Dizzy Gillespie, and it puts it together. You're
Yeah.
like, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's cool. I enjoy it for stuff like that. And I think how the algorithm works, I read an article, but I should have read it more recently because I'll probably say it wrong. But I think how the algorithm works is it has something to do with people that tend to like this song also tend to like this song. And it's like when I first started listening to Pandora, I thought, oh, this is going to be cool. If I like this song, I thought it was going to be more based on sort of musical structure, certain kinds of sounds, certain kinds of time signatures, beats, and like scales or major or minor. It's not. It's more like about if you like AC/DC, you'll probably like Van Halen. I think it's more about what people tend to like.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of tags in there, and I don't know if they're AI tagged or if they are manually tagged by the artists or by Pandora themselves. But there's definitely like this is a major minor switch up type song with, and they do it like if you can go through the music tags and find that in Pandora. And it tries to match them, but I think yeah, you're right. I think there is a kind of like Google algorithm type deal going on where if people gravitate towards this, then they start to link those together more strongly. So
yeah,
I think it does both, honestly.
Yeah, it could be.
And they're gathering data constantly from that aspect of it as well, because they've got the thumbs up concept and they've got like the thumb radio, right? So my thumbs up radio is going to have all kinds of random shit on it, right?
Right.
But then I become one of those data points now, right? Because if I'm sitting there hitting thumbs up on a whole bunch of different random stuff and it creates that station, it's now feeding into that algorithm.
So the ultimate genre becomes you. What is the ultimate collection of everything you listen to? The algorithm sees you as this is Dr. Sector music. Follow Dr. Sector. This is what he listens to. It's a Dr. Sector genre,
Isn't that the logical endpoint of genre anyways? Like to where it specializes and specializes down to each individual is their own genre?
I mean, it's getting to that point, I guess, with algorithms and stuff, we can like pinpoint, hey, this guy is going to listen to this and this and this and this. And if you combine all that together, that is a collection that is unique, like a fingerprint, a genre. Yeah.
I was reading a thing recently that pointed out that people nowadays are a lot more broad in the range of stuff that they like than maybe what they're given credit for.
Well, it's the access, man. I mean, like back in the day, you were stuck listening to either the radio or what you were able to buy. And now you can access all of music basically forever. And and I mean, in that aspect of it, I love. When I was a teacher, like it would blow my mind when kids would come in talking about old bands that I was like, how do you even know about that? And
right.
that's pretty rad. And I think that does push everything forward in its own way.
I think we all define genre differently. Like an artist thinks of it as like a box that they have to stay inside of. A listener thinks of it as all the different choices they have. A marketer thinks of it as which category they can push something into in order to give it the most revenue. Yeah. So like more like a demographic look. Yeah, that's a good word. So yeah, each section of the industry looks at genre a different way. And I think it's cool to kind of hear that come out in the conversation.
Yeah.
Guys, that does it for the multiple faces of electronic music. If anyone has any suggestions for the next video, feel free to email me, popartstreet@gmail.com, or even get in touch with one of us on the social media. We're all out there. Links will be below in the description box. Again, guys, thanks for coming out. God bless. Good night.